If you like storytime vibes, hit subscribe and let's dive in together.
7 years. That's how long it took for her voice to become a ghost I could live with. But let me tell you this, the last time I heard that voice, the real one, not the echo, she wasn't telling me she loved me. She was telling me, with the absolute chilling calm of a judge delivering a death sentence, I don't love you anymore, Daniel. And then she hung up. My entire world was reduced to the dial tone. Fast forward 7 years. I had rebuilt. New city, new firm, a life scrubbed clean of the chaos we used to call love. Tonight, I was celebrating a massive deal. Quiet corner table, dim light, the comforting scent of garlic and baking bread, like a memory you don't mind lingering. I ordered the carbonara, Emily's favorite, ironically, because I always said it felt like comfort. My phone was on silent. My mind was finally quiet. A rare, earned peace. Then the silence shattered, not by an alarm, but by a sound more familiar than my own heartbeat. Laughter, her laughter, that soft, rhythmic little chuckle that used to bounce off the walls of our first tiny kitchen. I froze, a glass of Chianti halfway to my lips. I tried to rationalize it. 7 years is long enough for memories to glitch. But my gut knew. I slowly turned my head. There she was, Emily. Same effortless posture, same unconscious habit of tucking her hair behind her ear when she truly smiled. Shorter hair now, a different man leaning across the table. But the way she leaned towards him, relaxed, unguarded, was the exact tilt she once reserved for me. My chest tightened. Not with jealousy, but with the terrifying, suffocating realization that the person who held the blueprint of your heart now walks the earth as a complete, beautiful stranger. I was looking at a ghost, and the ghost was laughing. I tried to focus on the carbonara, the creamy, comforting sauce, the perfect al dente pasta, but the fork was shaking. Not just a little tremor. My hand was vibrating with 7 years of uncried tears and suppressed questions. The waiter asked if I needed anything. No, I managed. The word a rasp in my throat. My appetite evaporated. I wanted to be swallowed by the dim lights, to pay the bill and escape. But I stayed. The part of me that still remembered her birthday without checking an old calendar, the part that missed the way she'd tuck her feet under me while we watched bad TV, that part held me hostage. Then she stood. I felt her presence, a shift in the air, a drop in temperature before she even moved. She walked over. The man at her table didn't look up, just like I used to, too engrossed in my work. Or maybe he simply trusted her completely. That thought twisted the knife a little. She was standing right beside my table. For one long, still second, we just existed. The only sound was Frank Sinatra singing about second chances from the restaurant speakers. Cruel, perfect irony. Then she spoke my name. Daniel. Her voice was steady, professional, but I saw her hands, clenched around her purse so tight her knuckles were white. That was the tell, the tiny fracture in the facade. She was a hurricane of nerves, wrapped in a calm exterior. And just like that, the years dissolved. I was 28 again, watching her read under the lamp. Hi, I finally managed. The sound was thin, fragile, like old paper. She offered a small, guarded smile. It's really you. We fell into the mandatory small talk, the kind of polite facade strangers use, except we knew each other's deepest fears and the exact shade of their irritation. How have you been? She asked. Good. Working a lot. You? She glanced back at her table. I'm managing. She shifted her weight, clearly unsure whether to stay or go. Then, her eyes drifted down to my plate, and the facade cracked completely. Softly, she said, You always ordered the carbonara. You said it felt like comfort. I smiled, a genuine one this time. It still does. That tiny, mundane memory, the smell of garlic, the creamy sauce, did more to bridge the 7 years than any heavy conversation could. 7 years, she whispered, looking into the distance. Feels like another lifetime. Maybe it was, I replied. Then she looked directly at me. I saw it, the faint tiredness beneath her eyes, the same haunted look she used to get after one of our late-night fights over work, or the tiny, insignificant misunderstandings that, brick by brick, became the walls we built between us. She took a deep breath. You look good. Thanks. You too. This was the moment. The small talk was done. Her expression tightened. She leaned in just slightly, her voice dropping to a near whisper. Daniel, I still think about what I said that night. The night you left. My throat tightened instantly. Before I could even formulate a response, the man she was with, tall and meticulously dressed, appeared beside her. Everything okay, Em? He asked, polite but firm. She quickly nodded. Yeah, just saying hi to an old friend. She turned back to me, the moment lost. It was good seeing you. You too, I choked out. She took 2 steps back, then stopped. She looked over her shoulder, her eyes slightly wet, and then she delivered the blow that would change everything. Maybe it's not too late to apologize, she whispered, and then she was gone. Back to her new life, back to the candlelight. I just sat there. My pulse was a frantic, erratic drum solo against the silence of my own shock. Apologize for what? Leaving? For breaking something we both kept failing to fix? The question was a venomous splinter under my skin, and I needed it out. I paid the bill and stepped outside, the cool night air hitting my face. I stood under the awning, breathing in the scent of damp pavement and the light drizzle. Should I go back? Say something real? What could I possibly say? It's fine, Emily. Don't worry about it. The truth was, I didn't even know which part she was sorry for. I walked to my car, and that last night, 7 years ago, came crashing back. The memory was sharp, vivid, like a film reel suddenly played at full speed. It started small, insignificant, like always. She said I cared more about work than us. The classic complaint. I fired back that she didn't understand the pressure. She called me cold. I told her she was cruel. A familiar, vicious dance we both knew by heart. Then she stopped dancing. She looked at me, her eyes empty, and spoke with that terrifying, complete calm. I don't love you anymore, Daniel. I packed a bag that night, not because I was truly ready to leave, but because I was waiting for her to tell me to stop, to say it was just the anger talking. She didn't. She stood by the door, watching me go. That memory used to cut the deepest, the silence as I walked out, the unforgivable finality of those words. I had dulled it, built a quiet life. Nothing chaotic, but hearing her voice tonight, seeing the tears, and then that whisper, maybe it's not too late to apologize. It reignited everything that had faded to embers. I drove home, neon lights slipping past like ghosts, and those 5 words replayed, louder than the roar of the engine. I drove home with the windows down, the cold air doing nothing to clear the sudden, deafening noise in my head. I told myself, I'll forget this by morning. It was just a weird, brief blip. But when I walked into my apartment, the silence, my carefully constructed, quiet silence, hit me like a physical weight. Her whisper replayed again, clearer than before. Maybe it's not too late to apologize. Near midnight, sleep was a joke. I poured 2 fingers of bourbon, the amber liquid doing little to warm the hollow ache in my chest, and sat by the window watching the rain come back steady. Then, the self-sabotage began. I scrolled through old messages I never had the courage or the common sense to delete, fragments of a life I'd meticulously boxed away, grocery lists, inside jokes, faded photos from when things were still simple. I found the last text before the divorce papers arrived. It was short, a final declaration. I hope you find peace, Daniel. Back then, 7 years ago, I took it as a final, harsh goodbye, a cold dismissal, a judgment that I was the broken one who needed fixing. I viewed it as her walking away, pristine and healed. But sitting there at 2 a.m., the bourbon burning, a horrifying and brilliant thought struck me, a truth I had shielded myself from for years. Maybe she never found peace either. Maybe she sent that text not as a judge, but as a fellow casualty. I didn't call her. I didn't text her back. Some things, like a perfect silence, don't need reviving. But I couldn't shake the feeling that the simple, clean narrative I'd created about our divorce, she left me, she didn't love me, I moved on, was suddenly being challenged by a single, wet-eyed whisper in a dimly lit restaurant. And sleep never came. The next morning, I was running on bourbon, adrenaline, and a haunting curiosity. I walked through the park near my place. The fog was hanging low, the trees quiet, everything muted. It was the kind of morning that felt like a secret, the perfect backdrop for an unscripted second act. And there she was. The universe, apparently, has a terrible sense of dramatic timing. Emily, sitting alone on a wooden bench, a coffee cup held between her hands, staring out at the foggy lake where a few ducks were gliding silently. She looked up, startled, a brief flicker of embarrassment crossing her face. "You again?" she said softly, a tired smile touching her lips. I smiled back. Guess we both needed air. She laughed lightly, the sound softer than the night before. I couldn't sleep either. I didn't ask about the man from last night. She didn't ask about my deal. We just sat side by side, quietly. The ducks paddled, the fog drifted. The silence this time wasn't heavy with things left unsaid. It was light, almost comfortable, like two veterans of the same war finally sharing a trench. Finally she spoke, her voice measured. "About last night, Daniel. I never meant to stir anything up." "You didn't." I lied, instantly. She turned toward me, her eyes steady, holding mine. "I just needed to apologize for how I ended things. I was angry. I thought leaving you would make me happy." I didn't respond. Once in a while, silence is the only answer that fits the immense weight of a life-altering statement. She looked down at her coffee cup, tracing the rim. "I kept telling myself you didn't care about me," she confessed, "that you only cared about work, but you did care. You didn't know how to express it without a contract or a timeline." We were both terrified. I nodded slowly, a single confirmation of a truth we had buried for 7 years. "We both messed up, Em." "Yeah," she whispered, the quiet admission hanging in the cool air. "But I think I made the biggest mistake." I looked at her, truly looked at the woman who had once been my entire universe. She wasn't the triumphant figure I'd imagined, the one who sailed off into a perfect, happy future the moment she delivered that fatal line 7 years ago. She was just Emily, a little older, a little tired, carrying a weight I knew intimately, the weight of choosing the wrong exit, of thinking escape meant salvation, and then realizing the new road was just as hard, only without the familiar fellow traveler. We stayed there longer. The fog began to thin, letting the pale morning light bleed through the clouds. It was time for the final autopsy of our marriage. We talked not about us, the failed entity, but about the whys of the late-at-night work calls, the whys of my chronic defensiveness, the whys of the corrosive silence that ate away at the edges of our marriage like a quiet disease. I confessed my deepest, most shameful fear, that if I stopped working, stopped building, I would be nothing to her. I feared her quiet disappointment more than any failure at the firm. She, in turn, confessed her fear that I had already decided she wasn't enough reason for me to stop, that the chase for success was always more thrilling than the stillness of our life together. It was the same fundamental fear, the fear of inadequacy, wearing two different, destructive masks. And in the park, 7 years too late, the masks finally fell. "I'm sorry, Daniel," she said, her voice barely a breath. carrying the finality of a closing door, not for leaving, but for being cruel, for saying those 5 words, I don't love you anymore, when what I meant was, I don't know how to make you see me anymore. I'm sorry I never gave us a chance to fix the root of the problem. I felt a monumental shift inside me. The years of tightly wound resentment, the emotional knot in my chest, didn't snap with a dramatic flourish. It simply, gently loosened. This was not the cinematic moment where you rush back into the arms of your ex-love. This was quieter, more profound. It was the sound of 2 people finally agreeing on the diagnosis after the patient had already died. I heard you, Emily, I said, my gaze steady on the water. That night, I heard what you said. But you need to know, I was just as cruel by my actions. I left, expecting you to stop me. When you didn't, I took that as proof that I was disposable, and I went out and built a fortress of success so I could finally feel safe from that fear. And you were right. I didn't know how to express love without the structure of a contract or a timeline. My apology is silent, but it's real. The sun finally broke through the thinning fog, hitting the surface of the lake just right. Blindingly, brilliantly beautiful. It was a sign. The final page of the chapter. She stood up, slowly. There was no hesitation, no lingering look of what if that I had once dreamt of. She was a different woman now, making a final clean exit from the last vestiges of our shared past. She touched my shoulder, gently, a feather-light pressure that spoke volumes of shared history and current distance. Take care of yourself, Daniel. You deserve peace. You too, Emily. She smiled, a genuine, unguarded smile that reached her eyes, the first one I'd seen in 7 years that wasn't filtered through the pain of our past. And then she walked away into the dissipating fog. She didn't look back, and this time I didn't want her to. I stayed on that bench a long time after she disappeared. I didn't feel triumph. I didn't feel regret. What I felt was peace, an earned, quiet peace. Forgiveness doesn't always arrive dramatic or loud. Sometimes it's just quiet words in a park, confirming that you both survived the wreckage. Years late, but perfectly on time. I finally understood the full, intelligent meaning of her whispered apology in the restaurant. She wasn't apologizing for my pain. She was apologizing for her own mistake, the mistake of burning down a bridge that only needed substantial repair, and the realization that the grass wasn't greener on the other side, just different and equally demanding. Her apology was her final act of self-release, and by accepting it and offering my own silent one, I released myself. She said, maybe it's not too late to apologize, but she never said it wasn't too late to try again. The entire encounter was about closure, not revival. It was about cleaning the slate, not writing a new story. And I realized, watching the perfect sunlight hit the lake, that the ultimate, most satisfying victory wasn't getting her back. It was standing there, alone, knowing I was finally free of the crippling emotional debt and the ghost of who I was. I was free to find someone who understood my complicated language of love, and finally free to learn theirs. The burden was lifted. She took the blame for the mistake of leaving. I accepted the fault for the mistake of coldness. The score was settled. I walked out of that park a wealthier man, not in deals closed, but in emotional debts paid in full. My heart, once a blueprint locked in her possession, was now mine again, whole, and finally, truly quiet. The kind of quiet that means peace, not just emptiness. And that, after 7 long years, was the sweetest revenge and the most profound form of healing.